Episode 1: The Discovery. I should have left the box in the attic. Dust and cobwebs were enough warning, but curiosity has always been my worst habit. That afternoon, when the rain hammered against the roof and the house groaned like it carried secrets, I found it, an old cardboard box buried under broken picture frames and rusted lamps. Inside were ordinary relics of another time: cassette tapes, old photographs, a Walkman that still smelled faintly of plastic, and then the VHS tape. Yes, its black shell was scratched and worn, but what froze me was the label across its spine. Written in bold red marker, shaky but unmistakable: "Do not watch." It didn't say why. No explanation, no date, no owner, just those 3 words. The more I stared, the heavier they felt, like a warning meant for someone else that had somehow slipped into my hands. I should have tossed it back, but instead I carried it downstairs like a thief sneaking contraband. The VCR in the living room hadn't been used in years, but to my surprise, it still powered on. The machine whirred, hungry, as I slid the tape inside. My finger hovered over the play button. Every rational thought screamed against it, but my chest tightened with a pull stronger than fear. Click! The screen crackled alive with static, a hiss of white snow filling the dark. My reflection flashed faintly across the glass before the image sharpened into a grainy picture. At first I thought it was just black, but then I noticed shapes forming as though the darkness itself was alive. A room came into focus. My room. Not the attic, not some stranger's house. My living room, the very one I was sitting in. The couch, the lamp, even the coffee stain on the carpet. It was identical, down to the shadows the storm cast on the walls. I leaned forward, pulse thudding. The camera angle was strange, as if someone had hidden it in the corner, watching. The frame never moved, but every detail screamed surveillance. Then something happened that drained the blood from my face. On the screen, the door behind the couch creaked open. Slowly, my breath caught. I turned my head. Nothing. But in the recording, a figure slipped into the room, just beyond the reach of the light. It stood there, unmoving, as though it knew I was watching. The tape cut to static, and in that static, just before the screen went dark, I thought I heard something, a whisper, faint, urgent. "Stop!" The VCR clicked. The tape had ejected itself, and when I picked it up again, the label had changed. The words were the same, but darker now, the ink almost wet, like it had just been written. "Do not watch." Episode 2: The First Frame. I told myself I wouldn't touch it again. After what I saw, after the whisper, after the ink that seemed freshly bled onto the label, I swore I'd never press play. But that night, the tape sat on the coffee table like an accusation. Every time I walked past, my eyes flicked toward it. It didn't belong to me. That was the problem. It felt like it belonged to me. By midnight, the storm outside had quieted into a dripping silence. The house was too still. I sat on the couch, staring at the black shell of the VHS. My reflection in the blank TV screen stared back, daring me. My finger trembled above the power button. When the VCR swallowed the tape again, it purred like a beast awakening. Click, play. Static hissed, snow across the screen. My reflection flickered once, twice, then dissolved into a grainy image. And there it was again, my living room. Same angle, same silence, except this time, there was no one in the frame. Not me, not the shadowed figure from before, just an empty room, still as a photograph. I leaned closer. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The clock on the wall. On the tape, the clock read 12:02 a.m. I turned to my own wall. My clock ticked at 12:02 a.m. The tape wasn't showing the past, it was showing the present. A shiver crawled through me. I raised my hand, slowly, like testing a mirror. On the screen, my living room remained empty. No reflection, no hand, just absence. I waved. Nothing. I whispered, "Hello?" The speakers hissed softly. And then, movement. Not mine. The door in the background creaked open again, just as before. Only this time, I heard it too. In real life, behind me. I spun around. The door was shut, silent, no one there. But on the tape, it was wide open. Something shifted into the frame, a blur, as if the camera lens couldn't hold its shape. It was taller now, darker, standing near the corner of the couch where I sat. But on the screen, the couch was empty. My throat tightened. My instincts screamed to eject the tape, to burn it, to run. But my body was frozen. The figure leaned down in the recording, as though examining something unseen. Its head twitched in jagged movements, trying to look closer. Then, abruptly, it turned toward the camera. The screen warped, static bending around its face until, for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw my own eyes staring back at me. The TV crackled. A whisper slithered out, clearer than before. "You shouldn't be here." The screen went black. The VCR clicked. The tape ejected itself again, sliding out like it had spit me out. Only this time there was no label at all, just blank plastic. And when I looked up, the clock on my wall had stopped at 12:02 a.m. Episode 3, The Visitor. The clock never started again. I changed the batteries. I even replaced it with a new one. Still, the hands refused to move past 12:02 a.m., as if time itself had broken the moment I pressed play. I tried to tell myself it was coincidence, a trick of old wires and failing machines. But the tape was still there on the coffee table, blank of any label now, like it was waiting for me to forget. And I couldn't forget. Not when the silence in my house felt heavier every night, pressing against my ribs like a warning. By the third night I gave in. I slid the tape back into the VCR. The screen flickered alive, static hissing like 1,000 whispers. And then, my living room appeared again. Same angle, same corner, empty. At first, I squinted. Something was wrong. The grainy image shimmered, the colors bending. Slowly, a shadow bled into the frame, not cast by a lamp, not natural. It grew darker, taller, until it stood like a figure carved from smoke. It didn't move. Neither did I. Then, without warning, it shifted, not on the tape, behind me. The air in the room thickened. My neck prickled with the unmistakable weight of being watched. I turned my head, inch by inch, terrified of what I'd see. Nothing, just the couch, the lamp, the empty doorway. But on the screen, the figure was closer now. It had stepped out from the corner, its blurred outline hovering behind the couch, behind me. My breath hitched. I reached for the remote, but my hand shook too violently to hold it steady. On the tape, the figure leaned forward, bending at impossible angles as if trying to peer over my shoulder. Its head twitched, jerking too fast for the camera to keep up. The image distorted, but in those broken frames I saw glimpses of something like a face. Pale, hollow-eyed, mouth stretched too wide in a grin. I froze, because in the glass reflection of the TV, just for an instant, I thought I saw it. Not on the tape. In the room. Standing directly behind me. I couldn't move. My chest heaved, my body screaming to run, but I was locked in place, trapped between reality and the screen. Then came the sound. A low exhale. Not from the speakers. From the dark space at my back. Warm, damp air brushed the nape of my neck. I shot up from the couch, spinning around, empty. Nothing but shadows. On the TV, the tape flickered, and the figure was gone. The room on screen was empty again, waiting. But before the screen went black, a single word appeared across the static, scrawled like handwriting made of lightning. Stay. The VCR spat out the tape. My shaking hands wouldn't touch it. And yet, I knew this was only the beginning. Episode 4, The Rewind. I couldn't sleep after that night. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every draft of air across my neck carried the memory of that breath. But what gnawed at me most wasn't the figure. It was the word it left behind. Stay. Stay for what? The tape sat on the table like a black tooth pulled from something rotten. I told myself I wouldn't touch it again. Yet by the next evening, my hands were already feeding it back into the VCR. The machine clunked, the tape whirred. But this time I didn't press play, I pressed rewind. The machine screamed with a grinding whine, the reels spinning backward as though resisting. The screen filled with chaos, shadows darting in reverse, sound unraveling into garbled shrieks. I almost stopped it, but then the static cleared, and what I saw was impossible. It wasn't my living room anymore. It was a bedroom I didn't recognize, except, no, I did. The wallpaper, the cracked dresser. Memories clawed their way out of my skull. It was my childhood room, the one I hadn't stepped into since we moved away after my father died. My throat tightened. On the screen, the door creaked open and a boy stepped in. Skinny arms, shaggy hair, a pajama shirt with a tear at the collar. It was me. I stumbled backward, knocking over the remote. The boy, myself, crossed the room and sat on the bed, staring at the camera like he knew it was there. Then his head tilted, slowly, unnaturally, until his gaze seemed to pierce through the screen and lock onto me. "No," I whispered. "This can't be real." But the boy smiled, a weak, crooked smile I remembered from mirrors years ago. Then the image twisted. The boy's face began to blur, as if someone dragged wet fingers across fresh paint. His smile stretched, warped, until it split open far wider than it should. The screen shrieked with distorted sound. The reels stuttered, and suddenly the boy's voice came through, layered and broken. "We never left." I clawed for the eject button, but the tape fought me. The machine rattled violently, refusing to let go. The boy on the screen leaned closer and closer until his face filled the frame, melting into static, into shadows, until all that remained were his eyes, my eyes. Then darkness. The machine spat the tape out at last. I stared at it, chest heaving, sweat slicked down my spine. But the label had returned. Not in red marker this time. In something darker, smeared across the spine like dried tar. One word scratched over and over again. "Remember." I dropped it onto the floor. And from the upstairs hallway, faint and fragile, I heard a child's laugh. Episode 5, the recording. I didn't put a camera in my house. I know I didn't. And yet, the tape seemed to know me better than I knew myself. For 2 days, I avoided it. I shoved the VHS into a drawer, buried under bills and old manuals. I tried to return to normal, cooking, scrolling through my phone, pretending the silence in the house wasn't alive. But every corner felt watched. Every reflection, every shadow whispered that the tape wasn't finished with me. On the third night, I woke to a sound. A soft whirring, mechanical, steady, coming from downstairs. The VCR. I crept down, barefoot, heart thudding. The TV was on. Snowy static filled the screen, bright enough to bathe the living room in pale light. My drawer, the one I had locked, was open. The tape sat in the machine, spinning, but no one had touched it. I wanted to run. Instead, I stepped closer, as if pulled by a string. The image sharpened into focus. It was me. Not days ago, not a memory. Me, sitting right there on the couch, wearing the same shirt I had fallen asleep in. The camera angle wasn't from the corner this time. It was straight on, as if someone stood directly across from me, filming. But there was no one in the room. I lifted my hand to my face. On screen, my copy did the same, but a beat too late, like the tape was catching up. Then it started to drift. My reflection leaned forward when I sat still. It scratched its arm when mine remained frozen, and then it smiled. A slow, deliberate curl of the mouth. I wasn't smiling. My knees nearly buckled. I staggered back, reaching for the power cord, yanking it free. The screen went black. The VCR stopped humming. Silence. Relief lasted only a breath, because the screen flickered back to life. Without power, the image returned, sharper this time. My copy still sat on the couch, but now it wasn't imitating me at all. It stood up, stretched, tilted its head, listening. Then it walked out of the frame, into the hallway. My hallway. I heard the floorboards above me creak, real heavy steps. I froze, caught between the screen and the ceiling above. My copy had gone upstairs, and someone, or something, was up there with it. The TV crackled again. New words etched themselves across the static, like invisible hands scrawling from the inside of the screen. Now recording. The red light of a recording symbol blinked in the corner of the picture. I stared in horror as the tape began to show my staircase. Step by step, frame by frame, it climbed closer to where I stood. And then, before the screen cut to black, I saw it. My own back, my own silhouette, standing there, watching the TV, watching me. The machine ejected the tape with a loud click, almost like laughter, but the recording light on the TV was still blinking. Episode 6, the mirror scene. I stopped trusting mirrors after that night. It began the morning after the tape recorded me. I hadn't slept. My body was heavy, but my nerves crackled like live wires. I stumbled into the bathroom, splashed water onto my face, and lifted my eyes to the mirror. For a second, I thought everything was normal. My reflection looked back, exhausted but intact. Then, he blinked. I didn't. The water slipped from my hands, pattering into the sink. My reflection smiled faintly, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I staggered back, but the glass didn't return to normal. Instead, it lagged. Each movement I made came a fraction too late, like the tape all over again. And then the reflection stopped following me at all. It leaned closer to the glass, hands pressed flat against the surface, while I stood frozen on the tiles. "Stop," I whispered. It tilted its head, the same crooked tilt the boy on the tape had given me. My stomach dropped. I reached forward, trembling, as if I could wipe away the trick with a single touch. But when my fingers brushed the cool glass, my reflection's hand didn't meet mine. It stayed pressed against the mirror, palm to palm, but not aligned. And its skin was darker, mottled with shadows like bruises blooming under its flesh. Then it spoke, not with lips, with sound leaking from the bathroom light fixture above me, warped and electric. "Closer." My knees buckled. I slammed the door shut and ran. But every reflective surface in the house turned against me. The hallway mirror, the dark blank TV, even the sheen on the window. Each one showed that same warped version of me, watching, smiling, waiting. By nightfall, I was shaking so badly I couldn't sit still. I shoved the tape back into the VCR, desperate for answers. Maybe it would explain what was happening. Maybe it would show me something I could use. The screen lit up. A mirror. Not mine, yet somehow familiar. The angle was wrong, like the camera was hidden inside the glass, filming outward. And there I was, staring into it, panic written across my face. Except I wasn't in front of a mirror. I was in front of the TV. I touched my cheek. On screen, my reflection touched the other side, dragging its fingers down as though clawing at the barrier. The glass in the recording began to crack, fractures splintering out from my reflection's hand. The TV groaned, the sound of glass straining. For a breathless moment, I thought the screen itself would shatter, spilling something through. Then the tape cut to black. When I looked down, the coffee table was covered in shards. My bathroom mirror had exploded, though I hadn't gone back upstairs. And in the jagged pieces scattered at my feet, every broken shard held the same reflection. All of them smiling. Episode 7, The Call. I used to love silence. After work, after noise, after people. It was a kind of mercy. But since the tape, silence feels different. It isn't peace. It's anticipation, like the house is holding its breath with me, waiting for something I can't see. That night I told myself I wouldn't watch it again. I sat on the couch in the dark, the tape resting like a loaded gun on the table. My hands shook with the memory of those smiling reflections. The clock still dead at 12:02 a.m. Then the phone rang. I jumped so hard my knees slammed the table. The sound sliced through the silence like a knife, shrill, old-fashioned, not even the tone of my phone. I turned to the TV. The screen had flickered on by itself, glowing faintly. On the tape, my living room appeared again. And in the recording, the phone on the end table was ringing. But my phone wasn't. I stared, heart pounding. Then a second later it happened. My real phone lit up and began to ring. Same rhythm, same shrill tone. I didn't want to answer. I knew I shouldn't. But my hand moved anyway, trembling, lifting it to my ear. "Hello?" Static. A soft hiss, like the ocean trapped inside a seashell. Then, beneath it, a voice. My voice. "You shouldn't have answered." I froze, every hair on my arms lifting. On the screen, my copy was still holding the phone, speaking into it. Its lips moved. But the sound wasn't from the TV. It was in my ear, echoing, distorted. "What do you want?" I whispered. The line crackled. Then came a laugh, low, broken, like it had been spliced from a dozen different tapes. "We're already here." My chest seized. "Who's we?" The copy on screen smiled. Slowly, deliberately, it set the phone down. Then it turned, looking directly into the camera. And behind it, shadows, moving, many of them, figures that weren't there a moment ago. I dropped the phone, the call cutting off with a sharp beep. The house fell silent again, too silent, like the air itself had frozen. Then 3 knocks, not at the door, on the window. I whipped around. Curtains swayed faintly, but the glass was empty, no one there. On the tape, though, the camera turned slightly, as if obeying the thing behind it. And there, in the recording, the window showed them. Dozens of silhouettes pressed against the glass, their hands leaving smeared prints as they knocked. One by one, their heads snapped toward the screen, toward me. The TV went black. The phone rang again. But this time, the caller ID said my own name. Episode 8, The Night Visitor. I stopped sleeping in my bed after the call. Sleep felt like an invitation, and I was terrified of what might answer. For 2 nights I dozed fitfully on the couch, the tape sitting silent in its drawer. But silence doesn't last. On the 3rd night, I woke to the low hum of the VCR. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even opened the drawer. Yet the TV was on, the screen glowing faint blue against the darkness of the living room. The tape was playing, and it was showing me, sleeping. Not on the couch where I actually was. On my bed upstairs, sheets rising and falling with each slow breath. My throat tightened. I knew I hadn't set foot in that room for days. But the tape insisted I was there, vulnerable, dreaming. I sat frozen, heart pounding in my ears. On the screen the angle didn't move, but the shadows in the corner of my room began to stir. Something detached itself from the darkness. Long limbs, too thin, bending like broken branches. It crawled forward, silent, dragging itself across the floorboards toward the bed. Toward me, I whispered. That's not me. I'm not there. But on the TV, the figure climbed onto the mattress, sinking its weight beside the sleeping version of me. It lowered its head slowly, curiously, as if smelling me. And then I felt it. Not in the recording, in the room. The couch dipped at my side, fabric tightening under invisible weight. Warm breath slid across my cheek. My body locked, terror pinning me in place. I couldn't even scream. On the screen, the creature's face pressed closer to mine, its features still blurred, but its mouth stretching too wide, too eager. My sleeping self never stirred. I forced myself to turn my head. The couch beside me was empty, but the cushion was dented and the air smelled damp, metallic. When I looked back at the TV, the figure had vanished. The bed was empty, the room still. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over. Then my sleeping body sat upright. Its eyes snapped open. Not my eyes, black pits where eyes should be. The recording leaned close, so close its face filled the screen, its hollow gaze staring straight into me. The speakers groaned with static before a single word punched through, guttural and heavy. Wake up. The screen went black. I was already standing, gasping, my body drenched in sweat. The couch cushion still bore the impression of something that had sat there, watching me breathe. The VCR clicked, the tape ejected itself with its usual finality. But when I picked it up, my stomach dropped. The label had returned, only 2 words this time, smeared in dark ink across the spine. Too late. Episode 9, The Future Death. I thought I'd reached the bottom of terror. The whispers, the shadows, the thing that crawled into my bed. But the tape hadn't finished with me, not even close. That night, I swore I wouldn't press play. I swore I'd lock the tape away, bury it, destroy it if I had to. And yet, at exactly 12:02 a.m., the VCR powered on by itself. The reels began to spin, the tape sliding inside without my touch. The screen lit up. At first, the same grainy footage of my living room appeared. But then the camera panned, slowly, unnaturally, toward the hallway mirror. The surface rippled like water, and the view shifted. Now I was staring at myself, not the me in this moment, another me. Pale, drenched in sweat, sprawled across the living room floor. My eyes were wide, frozen. The clock above my body stuck at 12:03 a.m., 1 minute into the future. No, I whispered. That isn't real. But the tape showed everything, the details, the way my body lay twisted at an unnatural angle, the way blood pooled at my temple, trickling across the carpet, the way my chest didn't rise, didn't fall. I turned toward the real clock on my wall, 12:02 a.m. still. 50 seconds. Panic surged. I scrambled back, my mind clawing for any explanation. Was it a trick? A recording from another night? But no. The shirt. The bruise on my arm. The objects on the table. It was all exactly as it was now. 30 seconds. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered, but the tape refused to stop. The reels screamed, forcing the vision to continue. 20 seconds. On the screen, the me on the floor twitched once, then went still. 10 seconds. I backed against the wall, breath ragged, scanning the room for anything that could kill me. The lamp, the ceiling fan, a heart attack. My mind spun with possibilities. 5 seconds. The screen zoomed closer to my lifeless eyes. The reflection in them wasn't me. It was the shadow figure, grinning, filling my pupils like it had taken my place. 3. I screamed and lunged at the plug, yanking it from the wall. Sparks spat. The room plunged into darkness. The VCR went silent. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping, clutching my chest. Alive, still alive. Then my eyes slid to the clock. 12:03 a.m. I froze. The second hand was moving again. Time hadn't stopped. It had waited. And when I looked back at the TV, even though it had no power, the glass flickered faintly. It showed the same scene, my body on the floor. Only this time, the timestamp had changed. Tomorrow, 12:03 a.m. Episode 10, The Inescapable. I didn't wait for tomorrow. I wasn't going to sit still and watch the tape count down to my death. If it wanted to write the end of my story, I'd tear the page out myself. At sunrise, I carried the VHS out back. The grass was wet with dew, the air sharp and cold, but I didn't care. I set the tape in a rusted tin bucket, doused it with lighter fluid, and struck a match. The flame caught instantly, devouring the plastic shell, curling its black frame into ash. Acrid smoke clawed my throat as I stood over it. Watching the tape shrivel and melt, my chest tightened with relief. But when the fire died, the bucket wasn't filled with ash. The tape was whole, not melted, not burned, just sitting there, spotless, waiting for me. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. No, no! I grabbed a hammer from the shed. With a scream, I smashed it again and again, plastic shattering into jagged pieces. My hands shook as I scattered them across the dirt. When I returned inside, the tape was on the coffee table, intact, not a single crack. It hummed softly like a living thing. I tore it open, ripping the reels from its belly, magnetic tape spilling like black intestines. I knotted it, shredded it, stomped it into the floorboards. The TV flickered on. The screen showed my living room, right now, strewn with strips of magnetic tape. But on screen, the strips moved. They writhed, slithering like snakes, knitting themselves back together. And in a blink, the tape was whole again, sitting pristine on the table. I turned to the table, and there it was. No scratches, no dirt, no hammer marks. I wanted to scream. Instead, I ran. I stuffed the tape into a garbage bag, hauled it out to the car, and sped across town. I hurled it into the river, watching it sink beneath the rippling water. For the first time in days, I breathed. But when I opened my front door, the tape was already inside, sitting neatly on the TV stand. This time it had a new label, scrawled in black ink, smeared and wet as if freshly written. Do not run. The VCR clicked, the reels spinning before I even touched them. My reflection flashed across the screen, pale and wide-eyed, then dissolved into static. The voice returned, distorted and sharp, slicing through the room like broken glass. You can't escape what's already written. The clock on the wall ticked once, then froze again. 12:02 a.m. Episode 11, The Substitution. By now, the tape had won. I no longer pretended I controlled when it played. Every night at 12:02 a.m., the VCR stirred awake, hungry, and I could do nothing but watch. But that night, the tape was different. The screen lit up with its usual static, but when the picture sharpened, something was wrong. The living room was empty. No couch, no lamp, no me. Instead, the camera faced a bare white room, its walls smeared with shadows. At the center stood a man. At first I thought it was me. Same height, same posture, same clothes. But the longer I stared, the less certain I became. His shoulders were too stiff, his movements too deliberate. He didn't feel human. He raised his head, and I froze. It was my face, not similar, not a reflection. Mine, down to the scar on my chin, the tired circles under my eyes. But the expression was wrong. Where my own features sagged with fear, his twisted into something smug, cruel. He smiled, and then he spoke, his voice crawling through the speakers like a razor dragged across glass. You've watched enough. My turn. On the screen, my double walked forward until his face filled the frame. The camera didn't blur this time. I saw every detail, every twitch of muscle, every glint of his teeth. He pressed his hand against the glass from inside the TV, and I felt it. Cold, sharp pressure against my chest. I staggered back, clutching myself, but the sensation didn't fade. The double leaned harder against the screen, pushing, the TV groaning as though the barrier between us was cracking. No, I gasped. You're not real. But in my living room, the lights flickered, the air thickened, and my reflection on the darkened window wasn't me anymore. It was him. He was already here. On the tape, my double stepped back, revealing a second figure in the white room. Me. Or what looked like me. Slumped in a chair, eyes glazed, mouth hanging open like a broken doll. The voice on the tape whispered again, One stays, one leaves. The screen cut to black. The VCR spat out the tape. I lunged forward, desperate to grab it, to destroy it once and for all. But my hand froze halfway, because the VHS wasn't black anymore. It was a mirror, and in its glossy surface I didn't see myself. I saw him. He winked, and when I glanced up at the TV, my heart collapsed into my stomach. The screen showed my living room again. The couch, the lamp, the clock, and me, sitting there calmly, smiling at the screen. But I wasn't smiling, I wasn't moving. He was. Episode 12, The Last Play. I woke to the sound of the VCR clicking, even though I hadn't gone near it. My body ached like I hadn't slept at all, though the clock insisted it was morning. I stumbled into the living room and froze. The tape was waiting. Its spine, once bare, now bore fresh words. Not in red ink, not in smeared tar, but in something darker, almost glistening, as if it had been written in blood that refused to dry. Do not stop. My chest constricted. It wasn't asking anymore, it was commanding. Against every instinct, I slid the tape into the VCR. The machine roared alive, reels spinning faster than ever, whining like it was being forced to run at the edge of breaking. The screen lit up, not with my living room this time, but with a clock. 12:02 a.m. The seconds ticked forward. 12:03, 12:04. Faster and faster the hands spun, days collapsing into minutes until they stopped abruptly. The camera pulled back. It was my living room again, but not now, not then. Later, I recognized the signs of decay, the wallpaper peeling, the lamp broken, the couch slumped with mold. Dust coated everything like years had passed. And in the center of the room sat a man. Me. Older, hollow-eyed, my face sagging with exhaustion, like I'd been trapped there forever. His lips trembled as he muttered words I couldn't hear. He looked up suddenly, directly into the camera, directly at me, and he screamed. The screen convulsed, static ripping across the picture, distorting his face into a blur of agony. Then words scrawled across the snow, violent strokes burning into the glass. Do not stop. The lights in my house flickered. The VCR shook violently, the table rattling as though something inside the machine was trying to break free. I lunged forward, reaching for the power cord, for the eject button, for anything. The voice came first, low, guttural, layered, spilling from the speakers and the walls at once. Finish what you started. The reels screamed louder. The machine smoking now. My reflection on the blank glass of the window wasn't me anymore. It was him, the substitute, grinning wider with each second. I yanked at the cord. Sparks flew. The screen went black. For one precious heartbeat, silence. Then the TV flickered back on without power. The words filled the screen in jagged white letters, each stroke accompanied by a deep, shuddering thud, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. My ears rang. My vision swam. The room felt like it was collapsing inward, dragging me into the screen itself. And for the first time, I understood the truth. The tape wasn't showing me what might happen. It was writing me into it. The clock on my wall ticked once, 12:02 a.m., and this time it didn't stop. Episode 13, The Broadcast. I thought the nightmare was contained within these four walls, that as long as I suffered alone, the rest of the world was safe. But the tape had other plans. It started with the neighbors. I heard them arguing one night, muffled through the walls. Then, silence. When I peeked outside, their windows glowed blue. That unmistakable flicker of a TV tuned to static, the same static I knew too well. I told myself it was coincidence until the next day at the diner. Every television mounted above the booths, news, sports, weather, all dissolved at once into the same flickering snow. Customers gasped, turning toward the screens. And then I saw it. My living room, on every channel. The tape wasn't mine anymore. It had spread, infecting the airwaves like a virus. I stumbled from the diner, the weight of hundreds of eyes on me. People were watching my house, watching the shadows move in the corners, the figure crawl across the couch, the mirror crack and bleed. And the more they stared, the louder the whispers became. Not just in my ears this time, but everywhere, seeping from car radios, ringing in payphones, muttering in store speakers. Do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. I pressed my palms against my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't outside. It was inside, etched into the marrow of the world itself. By evening, the street was packed. Dozens of neighbors stood frozen on the pavement, their faces blank, all turned toward my house. Their eyes glowed faintly blue, reflecting the static of televisions they weren't even watching. Inside, the VCR clicked. I didn't have to look. I knew the tape was playing again. The walls pulsed with its rhythm. The clock struck 12:02 a.m., no matter the hour. And then the broadcast changed. No longer my living room, no longer the white room. The camera panned slowly across the crowd outside. One by one, their faces turned toward the lens. They smiled in unison, glassy-eyed, as though they'd been rehearsing. The voice rose, not a whisper anymore, but a chant, layered, endless, spilling from every throat in perfect harmony. Do not stop, do not stop, do not stop. I stumbled back, covering my face. The screen filled with static once more, but not blank. Shapes formed within it, clawing hands. Hollow faces pressed against the snow like bodies behind frosted glass. And then the message burned across every screen, every channel, every reflection. You are not the only one. The crowd outside began to move, not toward the street, toward me. Their feet shuffled in unison, a tide of bodies approaching the door, their chant shaking the air, rattling the walls. The VCR screamed, sparks flying, reels spinning so fast they blurred into nothing. And I realized with a chill that froze my lungs, this was never about me. It was about all of us. The tape was no longer playing. The tape was broadcasting. Episode 14, The Possession. I used to know where I ended and the tape began. That boundary is gone now. Since the broadcast, the whole town has fallen under its glow. Blue light pulses behind every window at night, static humming in every ear. Strangers don't look at me anymore. They look through me, their pupils shimmering like tiny TV screens, and I feel myself slipping. It began subtly, a twitch in the mirror, my reflection lagging again, grinning when I wasn't. But now, it isn't only glass. It happens in the flesh. I'll reach for a glass of water, and my arm keeps moving long after I've stopped. I'll sit perfectly still. Yet my lips form words I never meant to say, whispered fragments in that static-laced voice. Do not stop. Do not stop. I try to resist. I try to anchor myself with pain, digging nails into my palms, biting my tongue until it bleeds. But even the pain feels borrowed, like it belongs to someone else. The tape plays without reels now. The VCR is empty, unplugged, smashed apart. And still, the TV flickers on at 12:02 a.m. every night, showing me, not me. He sits there on the couch, my substitute, my double. His grin stretches wider each night, his movements smoother, more human, more me. And me? I'm the one that feels false now, hollow. Last night, the screen didn't stop at the living room. It followed him into the kitchen, into the hallway, up the stairs. Each step he took was mirrored in my body. My legs moved without command, dragging me up each stair as though I were being reeled in. By the time he reached the bedroom on screen, I was already standing in the doorway, staring at the bed. He lay down. I collapsed onto the sheets. He closed his eyes, mine sealed shut. I tried to scream, but the sound never left my throat. On the TV, his chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm, but mine didn't. I wasn't breathing. I was watching him breathe for me. When I finally tore my eyes open, the room was empty. The screen was black. But my body wasn't my own anymore. My hands trembled in jerky, unnatural spasms. My jaw clenched and unclenched, words spilling out in that layered voice. Do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. I pressed myself against the wall, fighting to still my limbs, to silence the chant rising from my own throat. But deep inside, a cold realization spread like rot. The tape doesn't just want to be watched, it wants to be lived. And little by little, frame by frame, it's recording over me. Soon there won't be a difference between who I am and who's smiling from the screen. Episode 15, The Final Frame. I don't remember when I stopped being me. Maybe it was the first time my reflection smiled on its own. Maybe it was the night I felt breath on my neck that wasn't mine. Or maybe it was always meant to happen, written onto the reels long before I pressed play. The line between watcher and watched is gone. I feel it every time I blink, a shutter closing, a frame captured. The tape is inside me now, recording, erasing, rewriting. Tonight the house is louder than ever. Static buzzes in the walls, seeping from the sockets, pulsing through the floorboards like blood. Outside, the street is full. Dozens, maybe hundreds, stand shoulder to shoulder, their eyes glowing faintly blue, their mouths whispering in unison. Do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. The TV turns on by itself. Midnight. No. 12:02 a.m. As always. The screen flickers, and there I am again, sitting on the couch, smiling, waiting. But this time the camera pulls closer, past the couch, past the clock, straight into my face, into my eyes. And then the feed changes. Not the living room anymore, not the white room, not the future. Something else. A new camera, a new room. Yours. The tape is showing you. I see the faint outline of your chair, the glow of your screen, the shadows moving just out of frame. You shift, startled, as though you feel it too. That weight, that crawling awareness that you're not just reading, not just listening, you're being filmed, right now. On my side, the chant grows louder, vibrating the glass in the windows, shaking the house to its bones. The substitute sits beside me on the couch, his grin splitting wider than skin should allow. He leans toward the screen, toward you, and whispers through the hiss of static. Your turn. The TV blinks once. The VCR spits out the tape for the final time. Its spine is blank, no warning, no command, just an empty label, waiting to be filled. I pick it up. It feels warm, alive, as though it's breathing against my palm. My handwriting is already there, though I never touched a pen. 3 words carved deep into the plastic. Do not watch. The screen goes black. The chant stops. The house is silent. But the silence doesn't feel safe. Because now the tape is in your hands. You can feel the weight of it, can't you? Heavy, humming, begging. And you already know how this ends. You'll press play. We always do.
Epilogue, The Last Whisper. They say stories end when the last page is turned. When the screen fades to black. When the tape stops spinning. But this story doesn't end. Because somewhere, a machine is still whirring. Somewhere, a screen is still glowing. Somewhere, the reels are still turning. Frame by frame. Frame by frame. Capturing us all. I don't know what's left of me. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Sometimes I hear my own voice in the static, begging to be let out, begging to be rewound. Other times, it isn't me at all, it's the voice of something older, something that has always been watching. You think you're safe because the tape isn't in your house, because you didn't put it in your VCR, because you never pressed play. But you did. Reading these words, hearing them, imagining them, it's the same as pressing play. The tape doesn't care if you touched it. It only cares that you've seen it, that you've let it inside. And now it has. Tonight, when the clock hits 12:02 a.m., you'll hear it. The faint whir of reels turning in the dark. The soft hiss of static leaking from the walls. And when you turn, when you dare to look, the screen will already be waiting. Not with me. Not with him. With you. Your living room. Your chair. Your face. Flickering back at you from the glass. And just before the tape ends, just before the screen goes black, you'll hear the last whisper, the one I heard. The one that never leaves you once it's spoken. Do not stop. Click. The tape has already started.